This is a bit about the history of Brook End, where now it's been taken over by Chelmer Village, basically. Anyway, Brook End, it's used to come up the old A12, and where Sanford Road is, you used to turn off to come to Brook End. If you sort of took the left fork, you would come to Brook End. If you took the right fork, you'd go down to Barnes Mill. Anyway, coming down the road, you used to come, the first corner you come to was Gravel Pit Corner. And we used to call it the Tops. You used to be able to walk right across, and there used to be watercress ditch up there, and people used to get loads and loads of watercress there years ago. You used to come down the right on that corner, and then you come down to Prentice's Farm, which you went round the corner to the left, and then you would come down the road a bit further. There used to be a house called Wilshire's, and then another bungalow where George May used to live, and then you come to the corner where Horn's Farm was. If you'd done a left there, you'd go through which we called the Cinder Track. There was a couple of old cottages up there which used to belong to Peasall Farm. Anyway, you turned right at Horn's Farm, followed the road down, and the council houses, which would be on your left hand side, and on the right hand side on the corner there used to be a phone box which we had to use. That was the only phone box in Brook End. You come round the corner there to the left, and then on the right hand side there would be Windmill Cottage, which it had its own sort of bake oven and everything in the garden. A little bit further down there was the actual windmill, which I don't remember, but my mother used to say about the windmill being there. Then you come down a little bit further, and then on your left hand side there was a spinney. On the right hand side there's Peasall Farm, which you come past them, where Mrs. Vine used to live there years ago, and Mahoney used to farm it. On your left hand side there's a path go through now which goes up to Chelmer Village, where a lot of people go up and down now on their mobility scooters and whatever. But that used to be the path to where the cottages was for the farm. Where roughly the cottages was is where the monument is with the Stone Age thing on it now. Anyway, that's sort of roughly the area where they was, which, as I say, was along the Cinder Track, or we called the Cinder Track. Anyway, coming back to Peasall, used to come past there, and then the bungalows where we lived was on the left-hand side before you get to the main sewer gate. There was Turners lived in the first one, Ashman's in the second one, we lived in the third one, Holloway's in the fourth one, Twins in the fifth one, Burrell's in the sixth one, Goddard's in the bigger house, where the foreman used to live, to the sewer farm, which was my Uncle Stan, where actually my brother still lives to this day. Anyway, you come to the fork there, a T-junction, where if you went off to the right, you went down to where the Chelmer is, got down there, and there was a house on Storm's Farm, where years ago they used to make cricket bats. Where the house was pulled down where Storm's Farm was, my brother used to have a caravan on there. I mean, that's going back to the 50s. Anyway, come to the bridge where George King used to live. He used to be the sort of caretaker of the river. He used to drive the dredger and look after the river and keep it clear. Anyway, over the bridge used to be a holiday cottage out in the field there on the left-hand side. Anyway, you come down to the corner, and that's where Roger Clark used to live. He used to do all the repairs of televisions and radios and whatever. Anyway, next door to him, Joe Clark used to live. He used to be our local oil man, where we used to get our paraffin and accumulators for the radios and whatever. Anyway, past him, and then there used to be a house there called where Mr. and Mrs. Searles lived. There used to be a little track there which used to be able to go through the ford to Moram's Lane, where some cottages there on the right hand side as you used to go through the ford, which are still there now. Anyway, before you got to the ford, there used to be a church army, a green sort of corrugated hut. Anyway, Mother said years ago there was some graves there, but whether that's true or not I do not know. Anyway, you go past where the cells used to be some houses. There used to be more houses on that corner, which have all gone now. And then on the left there, the waterworks is still there. Come round the corner, over the hill again, over the bridge again, which we called the Umbrella Bridge, because you used to be able to get underneath there to keep dry. I can remember once one of my neighbours falling in the river and they're nearly drowning. But that was about 1955, I would think. Come over the bridge, and there was some houses on the left-hand side as you come down the road there, which was a semi-detached house and one little old thatched cottage where Mrs. Morley used to live. And anyway, come past there, follow the road down, and then you come to Peasall Farm. And then you done a right there, and then you'd carry on up to the sewer gates, where you would do a left there, which you'd go down, which we always call Twinny's Corner. It used to be, he used to do allotments there. He used to do a bit of veg and fruit. But I think it's still allotments now. I think for, the local Chelmer Village people, I don't know. I know there's allotments still there. Anyway, come round there, and there was a house on the corner there, and then there was just round the corner, we always used to call it Dump Corner, because there used to be a sort of local dump there, and there used to be half a dozen pollards trees before you got to Brook End Farm. And I remember years ago I found a bayonet in there, and I'm sure it come from sort of the redcoats. It was a 3-sided bayonet which sort of clipped on the end of a rifle, but I don't know what happened to it in the end. I haven't got a clue. That's Brook End Farm there, and my grandfather used to be the manager at the sewer farm. My father was a foreman there. He worked there for 47 years. So we've always been sort of Brook End, and my mother was born in Brook End, and her father, well, I think he was born in Brook End. I think everybody was Brook End. Opposite Brook End Farm there used to be a field there which is called Goddard's Field. And old Reg Goddard used to be there. He used to have a horse and cart and used to take veg round. That's in the 50s. Follow further up the road, about, 50 yards past Reg Goddard's on the right, there used to be a well on the side of the road. I don't know who used it. I don't know who it was for. The cottages, which is a little bit further up. Grandmother lived there. Anyway, a little bit further on, there was another greengrocer, Alf Turner. Then sort of round the corner where the new school is, on the right hand side, our off licence. Left hand side where the new school is, there used to be a house in the middle of the field there, which was a big old thatched house. I think that's where my mum and dad lived when they first got married. Yeah. And that was when I said earlier that you walked along the tops, you could come out to that house coming across the fields. A little bit further up the road, there was up the hill, we used to call it, on the left-hand side, Bill Birch. He was another greengrocer. And then you went round the corner to the right, where David Fleming had a bungalow built. That was at the top of Harris's Field, where Chancellor Park is built now. So you go on a bit further, and then you come to sort of Cooten Hall, where an old boy who used to work on the farm with us, old Dick May, used to live round the back of Cooten Hall. It was owned by Marriages when old Dick used to live there, and then Colonel Cramphorn bought it, where my mother used to work for him as a char. Anyway, come round past Colonel Cramphorn's, or past Cooten Hall. That's where your Neolithic site is now, and old Dick May used to have an allotment out the back there, which you'll see in the photograph. I'm sure roughly that's where your Neolithic site is. Anyway, come round the corner, then it was the dairy farm, where, same again, we had about 127 milking cows there. Used to store all the straw in the barn there, and there used to be an orchard up the field. Anyway, used to go round the corner there. Used to be a pond on the left-hand side. Come just round the corner. I think there are offices now, which are on the left-hand side. Deputy Cowman used to live there. and then you come past there, you come up a bit further where B&Q is now. I used to plough that field years ago, sort of back early 60s, very early 60s. I remember picking several fossils up on that field where B&Q is. And a little bit further up, there used to be a sort of cutout in the field where Jack Clark used to be, where he used to have 2 or 3 caravans and a couple of 3 steam engines used to stand in there. And then, because Cramphorn's Mill was on the left-hand side where you come up to the A12, Eastern Tractors was just round the corner. And then you sort of out of Brook End, then you sort of come to Pump Lane and that sort of area. Anyway, coming back to where Sanford Road was, and you turned off to Brook End, on the right hand fork you used to go down to Barnes Mill where the GPO was, and then you come to Barnes Farm. That's where my governor used to live, Robert Fleming. Well, David Fleming was in charge when I first worked there, and then Robert Fleming took over from that, where we had another 127 milking cows, which they was all milked into churns when I first started there. And they used to bottle milk there years ago, which I've got an old milk bottle from Barnes Farm, where they used to have the old cardboard lid in them. Anyway, then you just come around the corner from there, and then it used to be, we called it Cardboard City, which was the prefabs, where my wife's parents lived opposite Cardboard City, or the prefabs. Anyway, come round the corner, down the side of an old barn which was on the side of the road there, and then you come down to Barnes Mill, where there's a row of bungalows which are still there now, and then you come down to the actual mill, where I worked there for on and off sort of for the 3 or 4 years. We used to grind the barley up and whatever for the pigs that we had down Brook End Farm. Anyway, then you come a little bit further, and then you come through the track, and there used to be a cafe there, which I think McNear's owned, and then the Southgates, I think they owned it. Yeah. Where we used to be able to hire a boat out on a Sunday, and you know, a rowing boat or a canoe or whatever. And on a Sunday there used to be sort of, sometimes I would say, 100 people down there having picnics and whatever, and lovely place it used to be. Then Prentice's Farm was there, where we used to keep calves and cows and lots of sort of small cattle, not sort of milking cows. Anyway, then you sort of come back out onto the Brook End Road, where they used to have a cattle grid there to keep the cattle sort of from straying out onto the road. I think where you come out where that road was, I think they had when they was doing Chelmer Village, I think on the left hand side, I think they had a dig there where they found a lot of sacks and stuff in the field. I remember, you know, coming down there, and before they built the houses they let them dig it.
I'm Dave Andrews. I'm the son of George Andrews and Grace Mary Wilshire. The Wilshire family had Blue House Farm, which was down Brook End Lane years ago. And then of course we had lots of greengrocers and farms, and I can remember them ploughing in the field at the back of me. George Ashman used to be the look after the horses down at Brook End Farm, and then of course they used to cut the corn with a binder and have it made into sheaves, which they made into traves, which we call traves in this part of the country, and then it was put into a stack, and then the local farmer Robert Fleming would come, or David Fleming, and asked father to thatch the stack to keep all the stuff dry. I can remember him cutting the pieces to make the thatching sort of staples with witch hazel, and do that, and then of course then the thrashing tackle would come probably in the middle of the winter, thrash it all, that my 2 elder brothers used to work for. The Wilshire family, my great grandfather was at Blue House Farm which was obviously down the road here. The main families down here were the Clarks, the Wilshires, the Turners and the Searleses, and lots of them intermarried. I think two Wilshires married two Turners and two Wilshires married Searleses. And Ken Searles wrote a book, Bartfield to Brook End, which most of the family have of the area. The actual Storms farm, where they used to make the willow bats, was Surridge's, because all the willow was grown along the canal. Obviously the bats were made from there. And of course Reg Goddard, who had Goddard's Field down the road here opposite Brook End Farm, he used to work there, and I think he sawed his fingers off. I can remember he had one hand with just stumps on. It's amazing what's happened here. Of course, Brook End Farm, that was farmed. All the sewage was pumped onto the fields, and they used to grow celery in the beds, sewer beds. And he went to London. That was Mr. Crozier was the bailiff who looked after all the farm. I think there was about 36 people worked at the sewage works in the early days, but it obviously came down as it got more and more mechanised as time went on.